I think another uh, thing that you have to decide at some age with a setter when you're training them is how they are deceptive. How they get in the opponent's head, and it can't be your first consideration, but training to some point, it has to be included in the conversation with the setter of what it is they do that make it so you can't tell the direction of the set or the timing of the set or something, so that the attention is on the setter in a way that it gives some advantage to their hitters, because the blockers in particular don't know till the late point, or at all, in some amazing cases, because I've watched setters who have such natural change of direction back set um, abilities, or the way that they do it, that as a middle blocker you just basically can't read it. I've watched a setter who held the ball to the point that it could have been a throw, but the control that she had and the timing that she had absolutely held the block. Total advantage, even out of system. But is there any kind of an understanding between you and your setter, or in the setter's mind, in terms of how they know the game works and how they're hurting the opponent with the way they do it? I think there has to be some focus on deception, and you got to make choices about how you do it. I don't think that a typical 14 under team or freshman team in high school, that's necessarily what you're trying to do. But it does come in stages. But that's why the foundation being laid in a way that allows that to happen. So it's, I don't believe that the eyes follow the ball the same all the time. When you set a front set, you see it coming, you see it going, and that affects how you do it. When you see a back set, I don't think you should watch it go. I think back setting is a feel. That you do enough reps, this is how it is. I don't even have to look at what I'm doing. And so when I'm train the setter to keep their forehead in the hut, in the set to the left antenna or that side of the court when they're back setting, and turn and cover and look at the ball, rather than slowly as they go, letting their head fade into and then watching the ball as the ball goes. I don't think that's a good way to train deception later on. So you got to have them have awareness of what their body parts are doing, so that when they're young, when they're 14, I've been trying to help my granddaughter learn this for lots of years, and she's a 14 and under right now. Of that, one of the things you do if you're going to be good is you keep your forehead in the front set, unless you're trying to deceive by someone by showing them the back set and setting front, which is pretty advanced. But having an awareness of what they're doing, and figuring out how they can be deceptive. Finding out what your setter knows about the game in terms of attacking. I believe that setters who set a 5-1 need to understand attacking. They have to attack. There are moments where the best choice for your team is for the setter to attack, and everybody knows it, because it's, if you can get the other team to have to focus on you as a setter, on good passes, in-system passes, not just forget you and only focus on the 2 or 3 hitters that are there, but be able to attack. I think it's a huge part of the offense, and it is part of that connectivity between all the players of what's going to happen. Like when a slide hitter, and you're in a 2-hitter situation, and there's a slide hitter going behind, right? There are people already in motion. There are people that their attention is drawn to that slide hitter, and that can be a perfect time to dump to the middle of the court. When you're moving forward to set, anytime you're moving more than a foot or two, the middle blocker who's going to go with you, in most cases, when they release and begin to go, and you attack back to the middle of the court over your shoulder, if they're moving, they can't jump while they're moving, and it's hard for them to time it right. And it's a change of direction. So them understanding the situations of when to attack, the timing of when to attack, where the set has to be or the pass has to be for their set to be in connection and connected I think it's just real positive for everyone. So a lot of times, I think a lot of setters get left out of what they see when they're attacking, or when they're going to have to attack. And it's not something you can just say, come on, take a look. The first thing they have to do is, like everybody else in the game, in order to read, you have to take your eye off the ball almost all the time. As a hitter, as a blocker, you have to see physical things occurring that give you information to make choices. And so part of setter training, as you go up, which has to be ramped up, they do more and more, has to be getting them to take their eye off the ball, and feel what it's like when they're not looking at it the whole time, because it's like this huge security blanket that's flying around that I feel secure when I'm watching it. But it's amazing to take your eye off the ball and look to the other side of the court, look back to the ball, and know that you're just as good or better, and it's giving me information. Setters have to begin seeing before the play even starts. But if I'm going in to set an in-system ball and my middle hitter falls down and I set her a 1, that's a hint that you're not seeing, because I can look at the ball and I can see in my peripheral vision, in my world vision. I think it's called specific vision when I'm looking at the ball, and it's world vision when I'm looking at the ball and seeing the world behind it. And I can't see detail, but I can see things. I can see large things that give me information, like my hitter's there, and it gives me a feeling of where to set it anyway. But you have to put them in situations to get them to see things. Then their brain begins, if you don't have reps in your head of when you see things, what it means to you, then you can't apply it. And so beginning to see things when they're younger and getting that part of it's like having diggers they aren't looking at the hitter and the situation that the hitter is in, and you're not looking at them doing it, then you're not getting enough information to be as good a digger as you can. It limits your range dramatically, probably limits your control as well. So when you were starting to build a process to get setters to get connected with their hitters, I think we have to do something like intellectually away from the court, maybe, or it can be done on the court. So let's say we're talking about a 1 set. Me having a meeting with Cassidy Lickman, who set for me at Stanford, about asking her questions about what it feels like to set a 1. How do you gain advantage in a 1? There's a thing that I called a stuff 1, which you run late, you set it a little high, set it right next to the net, and you try to hit it, and the blocker just blocks it because you said, this is the blocking drill for you. This is going to be easy. Go ahead and block it. All right? That's just setting a 1 set, which could be really cool, but what you did is just waste a perfect pass. So there's a lot of information around the 1. It's like Washington used to, probably still does, run a high, slower 1 that's 2.5 feet off the net, and the hitter understood the purpose. Really hard to stop, gets hitters great swings. They're slower in their timing of their approach with their setter, according to when the ball gets to the setter. But it all works together. But the connection isn't going to happen if the setter and the hitter don't talk about it, maybe with the coach, about how to make that work. So if you're going to set what is probably the quicker 1 in the women's game, I'm not in the air hanging, waiting for the setter to deliver. That doesn't happen a very high percentage of the time. But what does happen a percentage of the time is the 1 that gets hit on its way up or at its peak. It doesn't have to be that high, but the hitter is going up with it, and they can choose when to hit it, but they are in a position on the court in terms of their body parts. So when they swing their arms when they're approaching, and they get up to their arms being parallel to the floor on their liftoff, if you're there when the setter touches it, it's really easy to get connected with that hitter. And if it doesn't work and the hitter knows I was right there, I was on time, right? that's a different situation in terms of fixing things and getting connected, because the hitter can say, no, I know I was on time. And as a coach, if I'm watching, I can see it. Then the hitter has to know that they either set it tight or they set it too low, or a combination, but they didn't get it in the wheelhouse of that hitter. But what the hitter is supposed to be doing in terms of the set you're choosing and what the setter is responsible for are things that both of them need to understand, because you need to hold each other accountable. If the hitter knows they weren't on time, they need to say to the setter, that was my fault, don't worry about it. I made it hard. It was different. But if I know I'm on time and we hit, we know why. And it's easy if you know exactly what you want. Like if you want to have a ball that hangs just a little bit, then have your arms in your approach perpendicular to the floor. My back swing, all right, and I start to swing forward. If I'm at that point when the setter touches it, it's going to go up and down a little bit. If it's going to do that, then you're giving the blockers time to do it, and you might need to set it a little deeper in order to be able to work the ball. But it's still a moment in time where you know that you're connected. And those are the things that we're looking for. So what we did, Cass and I sat down. It's the first time I'd done it. And yes, I'd coached a lot of years prior to that. But when we sat down and said, okay, here's this set, here's this set, here's this set, we wrote what it was that makes this the strategy of this set work. In other words, you're going to choose to set this ball. Well, how's it going to work in terms of being connected with your hitter? Location away from the setter, location away from the net, the height of the set, the timing of the approach. We just made a description of every set, what the middle was responsible for, what the setter was responsible for, and how the play was designed to work. And then you can add intricacies into it, like with middles in particular, all you have to do is change the angle of their approach, and it's going to change how the set can be effective. If I go to block to my right and I transition and I come in at an angle from right to left, blockers are going to see that. They're going to get to that angle, and it gives different openings for you than if you approached and came straight on, or if you approached and came at an angle from left to right. All right, well, middles and setters need to understand that if they're going to have a very high connectivity. All right, part of the mistake we made in doing this is not recognizing well enough or early enough in my coaching career the difference between being in system and out of system. The descriptions we'd made with Cass were almost all out in system descriptions of this is how the play works. This is your responsibility. This is mine. Out of system, we should have had another list we made. Exactly. You could still run the one. It's just going to change timing, but here's exactly how we're trying to do it, and have it happen intellectually on paper or at a whiteboard where you're actually drawing it up, writing it out, and saying, this is my job, this is your job. Then everybody knows what they're working on all the time. In system situations, out of system situations are growing and growing in different ways. The out of system part is really growing in importance because most teams are being taken out of system more often, because serving is getting better than it ever has at all levels. Attackers' abilities and offenses are getting better, making blocking more difficult, and it's making other parts of the game more difficult as well. Controlled digs. It's one thing to control a ball and have it be a rescue. It's another thing to control it in system. And as soon as the play happens, the offense should happen in sync, that the players recognize this is different. The gray area, maybe the hard area, is 8 to 12 feet, where what do we do here? All right, if I get beyond this, it's really clear what we're doing. If I get close to the net, it's really clear what we're doing. But we have to have those understandings in order to have a high level of connectivity in system and out of system. Now, one of the things I think is really important is getting to the point where you're choosing or discussing and making choices about how the setter's brain actually functions, their decision-making process. All right. So when does it start? Well, it starts when you scout.